Hello, George. It's Andrew.
Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Not too bad. More important, how are you?
Oh, I don't know. Tired.
Well, you mentioned that. I was a little bit concerned because you sent me an email saying, give me a call for what could possibly be the last conversation with Rainbow George. What are you thinking?
Well, I've done that before. It's never really worked. I've done that on radio. Imagined if this was my last call, what would I say essentially? So hopefully in my last call I'd say everything that I need to say.
Well, I always give you a platform, as you know, George. So I'm always delighted to speak to you anytime. So anytime you're feeling down or anything like that, do give me a call.
Sorry?
So anytime you're not feeling so good in yourself, do give me a call. But you're always welcome. If these are your last words, then we will treasure these, because you've been on radio all over the place recently, haven't you?
Yeah, but recently I found it very hard to get onto any radio program.
Well, I heard you on Talk Radio. Well, you've been on a couple of times this week, and there are a couple of things that they wanted to clarify about your policy about money and the $100 you were going to give people. Do you want to clarify that?
Yes, well, James Max on Talk Radio was asking what can Joe Biden do to unify America, and I suggested that Joe Biden could eliminate money poverty completely by just giving everybody $100 a day, and James Max poo-pooed the idea, but there was some lady economist guest on immediately after me, and she supported what I said. So that was nothing complicated. It was a very simple suggestion, and we will be looking to do the same thing here. Give everybody £100 a day, give everybody their daily bread, so to speak, and let things develop from there. It just doesn't make any sense to me that anybody in this day and age should be poor.
Oh, I certainly support that concept. And there are two things. I mean, you weren't alone. You're right that various economists did support what you say. And you're not alone in that thought, because Andrew Yang is his name. He had very similar thoughts about that. And there were two methods or two questions that people raised. One is about the means of exchange, and the other is about the limited supply. What would you say to them about that?
Well, I'm saying you create a situation where there is no limited supply. You create a situation where there's always enough money to cover whatever needs to be done. It's I've been imagining for a long time creating an artificial intelligence to play the role of a truly loving God and effectively run the world. Give that loving God the bank of a zillion wonders, and an electronic currency called the Wonder, and it's again, it's not complicated. It's just just the thought of the ultimate artificial intelligence, a truly loving God to look after everybody.
Yeah, which is obviously a fantastic thought, and but the other thing is just to drill down on this is what everybody's saying is that where does the money come from? Because obviously you're not just printing it. There has to be a value to that money. So in terms of the means of exchange, in the olden days, people would barter. If I had some eggs, I would swap it with the baker who would give me his loaf of bread or her loaf of bread. The value of the currency, the $100 that you're giving people, how does that work as the value of what you're actually giving them?
I think people agree what the value should be. I just imagine, as I say, a world that just has one currency in it, and the value of that currency is universal.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, obviously, we need to sort of, you'd normally drill down in these things. As you say, the value of an egg, you might have 2 eggs to 1 loaf of bread. If your wonder currency is, everybody gets 100 of the wonder currency, or whatever you want to call it, on that sort of basis, you have to say, look, what is the value of that? Because everybody's got that. What can they buy with it? Or are you saying that everybody has to agree the value of the $100 that they're given?
I just imagine that the 100 wonders would be worth what today, or much more than what today £100 would be worth.
Right. So it'd be that sort of exchange. So everybody has this, it'd be the same sort of value. And I guess the other thing they drill in down to, but it's obviously not just printing money, because you have to make sure there's a value there. And this is why Andrew Yang, and it's worth looking at how he's gone into it in a bit more depth. So rather than just, as some people do, just dismiss it as a crazy idea, if you actually look at it and think, well, if you want to eliminate poverty, and everybody, I think, would be on page for that. It's just a question of making sure the economics work. So having a policy, and it's what a lot of politicians do, George, they have a policy, but they then have the experts who help implement that policy. Is that effectively what you're saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm certainly not an expert. I consider myself to be a simpleton, and to me, I can only see things on a really simple level.
Yeah, but it's good. You need people who have the vision, and you need people who then can help implement it. So I think it's wrong for people just to dismiss the idea out of hand. What they should do is look at what Andrew Yang was saying when he formulated a pretty similar policy. And as you say, certain economists would turn around and say, well, this might work, but this is what you have to do. And obviously things like value, and make sure you're not just printing money, because that's not what you're suggesting at all. You're just saying, look at it and see if this is a possibility. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, I just see it simply. I'm made to visualize a world that has just one electronic currency in it, and a single bank that looks after and uses all the money in the world to establish and sustain effectively a virtual paradise.
Okay. As I say, it's a wonderful thought. And you said in your email to me, imagine this is the last conversation. I'm delighted that this will hopefully not be the last conversation, but it's a wonderful ruse that you use, as you say, to make sure we get a bit more airtime, which is fantastic. If it were the last conversation, what bits do you think we haven't covered in earlier shows with you?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. What it comes down to is I'm looking forward to April the 14th, which is the 36th anniversary of a party that I threw at the Camden Palace, and it was a party that was really looking to properly launch Captain Rainbow's Universal Party, and it was planned to be the first of what were going to be 7 parties at fortnightly intervals, and each party I was going to release a 1-hour audio tape. There were going to be seven tapes called The Captain's Tapes, The Key to Rainbow Land. And it all depended on the first party being a success to set everything in motion. And the first party was not a success. It was a penny to get in, and it was hoped to be £3 for people to get out to cover the cost of the hire of the Camden Palace, and be able to pay for the second one. But the second one never happened. Anyway, this April the 14th will be the 36th anniversary of that. So I'm looking to launch a new party called Us, and I genuinely believe that Us will win the next general election, offering the electorate 100 whatever a day. And so April the 14th, the launch of the Us Party, and maybe the first auditions for the role of the biblically prophesied Spirit of Truth. And that could all coincide, and ideally the Andrew Eborn show would do a special hour that could go viral and involve my music friend from Northern Ireland, Ben Reel, and we could put some, if you could humour me, we could do something brilliant on April the 14th. And what do you think, Andrew?
Well, I love talking with you, and delighted any time to give you a platform, as you know, and to talk about it and clarify things. I always say, as you know, question everything, keep an open mind, and question everything and drill down. And you say you're launching a political party. You've done that before. And obviously we can look at specific policies and get the experts around and so on and so forth. But no, I'm certainly up for having those discussions. We've started some of the audition processes already, haven't we, for the Spirit of Truth? Because we had Jonathan Hansler. What did you make of him?
Yes. I just need to... I'm spoiled for choice. I have to put together a 5-minute script for actors to be auditioning to, and I still haven't put that 5-minute script together.
Right.
And I keep playing around with it, but basically it comes down to... What does it come down to? It comes down to making things as simple as they can be, to be pointing out that the Spirit of Truth is prophesied to guide us into all truth and show us things to come. So within the 5 minutes audition, that can all be made to happen, and it's, I don't know, it's exciting.
Oh no, absolutely, and that's the good thing, because you've bandied all sorts of names around. We've had Jonathan doing one version of the script. Obviously, if you send me another version and some of the other people that you have in mind, they can get in touch. And also, anybody who's watching the program at the moment, if you'd like to audition for Rainbow George, do get in touch. Write to guests@octopustv.com. That's guests@octopustv.com, and I'm sure George would be delighted to hear from you as well. Now, the other thing which you touched on last time is, because we couldn't get the visual of you, we're trying to get you on video, which is fantastic. In the meantime, we've been using this glorious oil painting, which you told me was done by Beverly Isaacs. Tell me about that.
Well, Beverly's an old friend. She goes back to when I started in 1984. And Captain Rainbow's Universal Party had a selection of mini stars. We didn't have ministers, we had mini stars, and Beverly was the mini star for colours, and she's a talented artist, and I haven't seen her for a while, but yeah, that's Beverly.
Well, no, but wonderful, and what I particularly like, it's a fantastic line. It's a fairly large piece, George. Whereabouts is it at the moment?
She must have it in her studio home.
Wonderful. And when did you last see her?
Must be about a year ago.
Okay. And where is her studio home?
It's in Barnet somewhere.
Oh, Barnet. Oh, not. Well, I was born in Barnet in 89 Station Road all those years ago, so I have a lot of fondness for Barnet. Well, maybe we should track her down as well. Now, even though it's a ruse, and you said this may be the last ever phone call, I really hope it's not. But what if it were? What would you like to say?
I would like to say to everyone, be optimistic. I just think things are going to get wonderful. I am made to suppose that I mean, this is a far out thing to say, but I suppose that London is going to be transformed into the New Jerusalem, and London will lead the way to a world of wonders, a world that has no countries in it, a world that has no poverty in it, a world that has no taxes in it, and just to lead the way to a way of living that will be easy for everybody.
It's a wonderful thought. Obviously, as you say, we need the economists to work out where the money would come from if you're not taxing people. But I like the principle. I like the idea of eliminating poverty, as you know. I like the idea of wonder, and I like the idea of questioning everything. Now, George, you've now been called by a number of people a national treasure, which I think is rather good. How would you like to be remembered?
I quite like the sound of the optimistic mystic. I like the sound of that. So I'd like to be remembered as having been the optimistic mystic. I've been playing with words. I come up with the word optimistic, and like the sound of that, and opportunity. So optimistic, opportunity. Just playing with words is what the Bible does. The Bible plays with words and numbers to make fools of all of us, but I'm sure that the Bible truth is soon to be revealed by the Spirit of truth in a film called the Spirit of Truth ? Which will be made up of the 5-minute auditions of various actors and actors auditioning to play the part in a 1-hour film called Believe It or Not, which will say everything that wasn't said in the 5 minutes in the audition scripts. And it will really be interesting to see who is predetermined to win that part, because I'm quite convinced that everything is predetermined, and that choice is an illusion, and ultimately my favourite verse in the Bible, Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 1, a good name is better than precious ointment, and death than the day of one's birth. Is telling us that the day that we die is better than the day that we were born on, and I like the sound of that and suppose it to be true.
And we've spoken about that a lot on these episodes, and I think virtually every episode has got that in as your favourite verse, which is good. And if you were looking back, and if this were the final call, what would you like people to say about your relationship with Peter Cook?
Well, Peter was the wizard to me. I referred to him as being the Wizard of Watch, because he had created the What Party, and the essence of the What Party was to give everybody what they wanted within reason. And Peter made me the Minister for Confusion in the What Party, and I made Peter the Wizard of Watch in Captain Rainbow's Universal Party. Peter, I sense that his spirit is watching over us and enjoying what is unfolding in this world.
What do you think he would have made of all of it, Peter Cook? If you look down, well, if he was here now, what would he be doing and what would he say?
He'd be laughing at everything. He'd see the funny side to everything that's going on. And there is a funny side.
I think we always say it's like that wonderful classic mask, isn't it? You have the mask of tragedy and you have the mask of comedy, and that's life both sides, isn't it?
Yeah, but all this world is a stage. It's a written play written by a supreme being who has a wicked sense of humour and apparently delights in playing with himself, and I sense that we are the Humpty Dumpty like unconscious spirit of that supreme being.
And the other character in your life who you often talk about is Ian Dury. What would you like to be remembered about your relationship with Ian?
I only knew Ian the last 7 years of his life, but I was very fond of Ian, and Ian seemed to like me, and we did a few things together,
what sort of things? What would be your favourite thing you did with Ian?
Sitting in his little studio at home and playing with words. He was very much into word play, and so am I. So I suppose that's what I remember most about Ian, and Peter and Ian were both drinkers, and Peter was a happy drinker, and Ian wasn't. And the memories are almost all fond ones.
I remember Ian. I was once working on a show. I used to do the warm up for some of these TV shows, and there was Ian was presenting it together with Arabella Weir. So I met him on that occasion. But a real character. Well, both Peter Cook and Ian Dury were real characters. You've now been classified as a national treasure, which is wonderful. Is there any?
That wasn't serious. That was James Max taking the P essentially, but he is the only presenter on radio that I get to talk to nowadays,
But over the years, though, George, I mean, you've spoken, you've been a regular on many shows, including the Andrew Eborn show, which I'm delighted about. You've always got a voice here, always delighted to speak to you. Talk to me about some of the radio shows you've been on.
Well, the main ones were on LBC, and a presenter called Clive Borer. George from Hampstead became quite famous in that slot, but people on LBC really thought that George from Hampstead was Dennis Norden, and taking the P essentially. For years, people were convinced that I was Dennis Norden. So that's why I need to find someone else to speak for me, and that is what the Spirit of Truth will do. Will have a voice that will attract people's attention much more than mine does.
Well, Dennis Norden had a fantastic voice. I mean, did you ever meet him?
No.
Ah, well, that probably helped the rumour then. If the two of you were never seen in the same room together, they might have word about. But also, I mean, you have a history of phoning up radio stations, because that's what you used to do with Peter Cook as well, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. Peter used to phone Clive Borner's Sven from Swiss Cottage, and he maybe had, I don't know, maybe a dozen calls over the years to Clive, and the first presenter was a presenter called Mike Dickens. Did you ever come across him?
Yeah, I remember Mike Dickens. We love the DJs. It was just been National DJ Day, so with my good pal Mike Reed, we spoke about that fairly recently.
Yeah, but Mike Dickens, when I tuned into him, early in 1985, he was on Capital Radio. Used to do a very early morning program, maybe, I don't know, midnight or 3 o'clock or something like that. And he was the first presenter I called into, and in my first conversation with him, he said, I don't think we're ready for you yet, George. I think you've been born too soon. And he was right. But the second conversation, they were talking about extraterrestrials and stuff, and I called in there, and I told a lie, and it's the only lie I've ever told in my hundreds and hundreds of radio conversations. I made out that I was in telepathic communication with extraterrestrial intelligences, and that was a lie, and I regret having told that lie, because I had had a connection with extraterrestrial intelligences, but that had come to an end 8 years earlier than I was speaking to Mike Dickin, and he was interesting. His story is still to be told. I think he died in a road accident the day before he was going to do a special program on Talk Sport, in which he said he was going to prove that Princess Diana had been murdered, and I say he died in this road accident a day or two before that program was supposed to come out. And I believe that myself. I was listening to coverage as it was happening, and there was at one point that commentators were saying that she had stepped out of the car and seemed to be okay. But another mystery story.
Well, I think the important thing with all of these is that we get evidence. I mean, this is we've just had this with the election and so on and so forth. I always try and keep an open mind. I never like foundationless statements. I always like to look at the facts, go back to the source, and look at everything. It's only by looking at all the different sources and questioning people fully that you get to the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm thinking who else? What other radio presenters? Pete Murray, Bob Harris, Pete Murray, Peter Cook had the conversation with Pete Murray. I think it was on the evening of the penny party at Camden Palace. Peter phoned LBC and described what had happened there. Peter enjoyed the evening. I didn't.
Oh, did you know what didn't you enjoy about it, George? Oh, because nobody paid the £3 to get out.
A few people did, but I still ended up with a bill of $2,500, and did that 3 times in 1985. The first one was on January the 7th, and which turned out to be the coldest day of the century, I think, and I'd hired I'd hired a West Indian steel band and an open-top bus for them to be going around London drumming up support, and 1,000 balloons which I let off on Parliament Hill, and just genuinely unforgettable days. All three parties at the Camden Palace in 1985. But I'm saying, if we could do something together on April the 14th, it would be brilliant, Andrew.
Fantastic. Well, look, I'm looking forward to it. We're always here. We're always delighted to take your calls, and even with your emails that sort of prod us into doing something. I'm delighted this is not our last conversation. I very much look forward to further ones. But just to give you the final thought as the optimistic mystic, is there anything else you would like to say before we go this time?
Just look forward to April the 14th. Something wonderful could happen on the Andrew Eborn show.
Wonderful. Well, every time something wonderful happens on the Andrew Eborn show, it's always guaranteed. George, it's always a pleasure. The optimistic mystic, I loved all of that. Thank you so much for joining me.
All the best. Thank you, Andrew.
Take care. Bye-bye.